Hi, I'm Courteney Bailey, Chief Development Officer for MPTF. What you're about to hear is one of the panels that took place during our recent women's conference, Deal With It, on July 28, 2019. Madeline Hammond, who produces the conference, took great care to make sure we found the best speakers to cover the most relevant topics of today. This event is for the betterment of women in the entertainment industry, but there is such great information here that can really help everybody. So listen, enjoy, and most importantly, feel free to pass it along to someone who may benefit from this information as well. Today's podcast, and you might hear a familiar voice because I had the awesome opportunity to moderate this panel, Badass Women Who Inspire Us. Today you'll be listening to a discussion that was recorded live, so be kind. There may be areas where the audio drops out a bit or an audience member's question is hard to hear, but don't worry, you'll definitely get the context of what the panel is about. MPTF is providing this podcast as a public service, but it is neither a legal interpretation nor a statement of MPTF policy. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by MPTF. The views expressed by our guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Views and opinions expressed by MPTF employees are those of the employees and do not necessarily reflect the view of MPTF or any of its officials. Thank you for listening. That was incredible. So thank you. I inserted myself to host this panel because I said this is an incredible group of women, badass women who give back. So it's a big title. All of these women on this panel clearly fit the bill, as I'm sure everyone in the room does as well. And, you know, badass isn't about like wearing black leather and riding a Harley. Like, badass is about...
Oh, damn.
Oh, well, hey.
I know, I left my outfit at home.
If you do that, I forgot you did pull up on that big old hog outside. So, but badass is about, we were talking about Jennifer Lewis, being your true self. And she said something that we were just chatting about. I'd love for the ladies to comment on being unafraid versus fearless. Mm-hmm. You got to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid. Who is without fear? But it's what you do with that. So we'll talk about that, but I should probably introduce our incredible panelists. Right next to me, we have Lorrie Bartlett. She is a partner, a board member, department head for motion picture talent at ICM Partners. Next to her, we have Miss Michelle Hurd, who is an actress and activist and comes from a long lineage of the same. We have Karen Grimley, who is a PhD RN and the Chief Nursing Executive for UCLA Health. Talk about badass. I don't remember the doctor who delivered my baby at UCLA, but I remember the nurses.
There you go. That's what we're here to talk about.
Exactly. And her daughter works at the Goldwyn Center for MPTF, which is... Oh, volunteer. Sorry, Megan. There's Megan. Okay, parent president. Perfect. And lastly, we have Miss Lavinia Errico, my dear friend, who is a co-founder of Equinox. You may have heard of that gym. And she is a fitness and spiritual entrepreneur and just an incredible light in so many lives. So I'm just going to ask all the ladies 2 adjectives that describe yourself. Lorrie.
Oh, wow.
That's a tough one.
Okay. It's not that tough, but there's so many. No. I would say bold, thoughtful.
That is hard, right, to break it down to 2. I'm going to say tenacious and full of love.
Altruism and advocacy.
Generous and compassion.
So, Lorrie, I'm going to start with you. You have broken some pretty thick glass ceilings. I don't like this stat because I wish you weren't the first, but Lorrie's the first.
But I won't be the last.
You will not be the last, absolutely. First African-American to be on a board at a major talent agency.
First.
And I didn't say first African-American woman. I said first African American.
I didn't realize that.
And there's this initiative that I'd like you to talk about at ICM, which is unbelievable, the 50-50 by 2020. Why don't you tell us like how that came about and what it is?
Well, it actually really originated, and I believe, I think this is right, Jill Soloway came up with the name, right? And 50-50 by 2020 actually originated out of Time's Up. And, but our agency was the first agency to publicly say, we stand by this phrase, and we want to try to achieve it. And I can tell you that our company is 50% men and 50% women, which is pretty awesome. And 25% of the board is female. 45% of all the agents at the company are women. So we have a little work to do. So it's just the conscious decision to really look beyond yourselves. And I think for many, many years, men have just chosen people who look like them to represent, and I'm talking about in many fields, but certainly in the agency world. And so there's just a conscious effort on our part to really reach out and not make it the norm and really represent the way the world looks.
And I love that you're so focused on the leadership roles, not just 50-50,
Right.
but getting female parity with the leadership. So we're talking about male-dominated fields. Karen, things are changing and hopefully quickly, especially thanks to women like these ladies up here. So how did you find a way to work within a system and still be your best?
I think it was by being myself. I think that if there's anything I can share with everybody, it's finding out it's okay to be different and moving forward with that. I stepped into my first management role in a hospital, a Catholic hospital actually, with nuns and habits. And what was always interesting about healthcare is while it is a female-dominated profession, most of the leadership positions today even are still held by men. And we certainly don't want to repeat history, so hopefully we can keep changing that. I think there weren't that many opportunities, and in nursing, a lot of times you'll find that women are just as much of the problem as the men in the industry. There's always a saying about nursing eating their young. And I've always considered myself a nurse's nurse, and that was not in my vocabulary. So a lot of the things I did were different. I was the first unit manager in a hospital to walk in a suit. I didn't wear white clothes, and I didn't wear my cap or white shoes. I made a conscious decision to go in as an executive. And I made a conscious decision to get an MBA instead of a master's in nursing. And at that time, I took a lot of flack for that. People would say, well, what would you do with that? Well, I learned to translate. I learned to translate finance to nursing and nursing to finance. And that in itself allows you to set a whole new tone for a very traditional culture. And I think that's probably one of the things that I would say, be yourself, find your path, look for similarities, and blend with people. Relationships, relationships, relationships.
So we talk about being our authentic selves, and for Lavinia and then Michelle. Lavinia, you started Equinox. It revolutionized the way people look at fitness, and you really were in the class-based kind of fitness, and what you did was incredible, and you transform lives every day, whether it's being an angel investor, a mentor, et cetera, et cetera. So what is it about transforming people and others' lives that excites you so much, and how did that lead to what you're doing now? And tell us what you're doing now.
Well, first of all, I have to say, I love people. Like, I've just came out of the womb just connecting, like just loving to make a difference. I have a twin brother, so I was never alone. So for me, I just think it's like when you can inspire people and you can connect with them and you can help people find the best version of themselves. Like, I call it their genius. Like, we all have this genius that lives inside of us, but so often we are always proving our worth. We're never like living our worth. We're never grounded in owning that we're always just trying to prove how great we are. And trust me, I know that because I lived that. So for me, like, I work with young people now to really connect young, to really get in touch with who, like, a real deep connection of self, which I love today so often through these themes was really about self-love. So for me, it's really starting with that, getting people to really connect to that deep sense of soul that lives inside of us. Because at Equinox, and I believe it's what set us apart from everyone, is that I came right out of the gate saying, in order to be healthy, you have to be spiritually healthy, emotionally healthy, physically healthy, and mentally healthy. And really understanding that that's what health is. Health isn't about being a size 2. Health isn't having biceps or glutes. Health isn't, going and doing all of these crazy Spartan races. I mean, that's not health. Actually, very often that's being incredibly unhealthy. So for me, it's really inspiring people to really grasp of what health, what joy, what bliss, really connecting to your soul essence. A lot of people talked about purpose. And it's all in that same genre of connecting to soul deeply and having the courage. And it takes courage. I mean, it really takes courage to look at your dark side. But, if you don't take that step to do that, you'll really never have that level of joy and happiness. Because again, we'll always be resisting or not being completely authentic because we don't want to show how scared we are or how vulnerable we are. And that's what I loved about today. So many people are sharing about being vulnerable and about speaking your truth and taking your mask off. Like, that's what it's really about, is taking that mask off and showing who we really are. That's health, that's joy, that's liberation. And for me, as you could tell, it's what I am very, very passionate about. And that's why I mentor young people. Many of them come to me in business, but really I bring them back first to self, because I can't help you be the best version of yourself if you're not willing to go here. I can't just sit there and talk to you about your business plan when half of the time you're only doing this to prove your worth to your dad or to your mother or to whoever you're proving your worth to. When I really get down to the gist of it, half the time they don't even want to do that. They're doing it from something outside of themselves. So for me, that's what I'm doing now, and I love it.
It's fantastic. Michelle, you were just talking about Jennifer Lewis and her vulnerability.
Oh, my goodness.
Her being her authentic self, and just talking about going back to your roots with a little bit of your family history and acting and activism. So tell us about your family history and you.
I don't think I could have been anything other than an actor and an activist with my family history. And we could start with my father at age 18. He's a Jamaican man of beautiful coconut skin who born and raised in Harlem, New York, 125, and Frederick Douglass Boulevard. But at 18 years old, he enlisted in the war to fight World War II, and he was one of the few black battalions that was a liberator at Dachau. And my father told me many stories about that haunted him for the rest of his life and also inspired him to do what he does. Just briefly, he talks about when they walked in through the gates and that there was this deathly silence and this terrible smell and these bonfires of bodies, and that as this black battalion cleared these spaces, all of a sudden, slowly but surely, hands and arms started to appear, and the words "black angels" came out of these emaciated individuals, and all these prisoners knew that these black soldiers were saviors, because clearly they weren't Nazis, because they were black. So that color, was a saving grace. He speaks about being on a bus in Manhattan and sitting there years later, and an old man kept staring at him, and he didn't know why. And finally that old man came over to him and he said, "Black angel." He was also one of the Cabaret for Freedom organizers to protect Martin Luther King with Maya Angelou and Godfrey Cambridge. In fact, in Maya's book, Heart of a Woman, you can see a section that says, my dear friend Hugh Hurd, who had the skin the color of a coconut, and he was just as hard to crack. He marched with Dr. King. He was blacklisted because of Dr. King. My mother, a German-Irish white woman, born and raised in Blackwell, Oklahoma, after high school realized, this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not where I'm supposed to be. And so she moved to New York City, started working in theater, predominantly black theater companies. I don't know how that little Oklahoma girl did it, but she did it, and she met this black man and fell in love and married him and had 3 daughters. People who knew them from Oklahoma literally said, well, don't have children. Well, what are you going to do with the children? And my mother said, what do you think? We're going to eat them? We're going to love them and raise them, as we all should. So I am from that lineage. It's incredibly difficult for me to sit by. It's impossible for me to sit by when I see injustice. Not only am I on the SAG-AFTRA National Board, but I'm a founding member of Time's Up. I'm part of the Legal Legislation and Policy Committee in New York, where we put in front, it took a year and a half, but we put in front of Cuomo the bill we tried to eradicate, but to change the statute of limitation for stage 2 and 3 rape, which we were successful to do.
Yep.
And I have to say, being part of that community with these, Robbie Kaplan, these amazing lawyers, I love changing legislation. And that's really what we all have to do. And I have to, echo something that Karen said. Actually, all these women, I'm so inspired by every single thing that you guys just said. But one of the things that Karen said is that she made a conscious effort to do things, a conscious effort. And we need to do conscious work. Speak out. Talk about it, make change. Like Jennifer says, if someone didn't, you tell that one person, tell the other. And what I was saying when we were talking about that is that she had, what was so beautiful and intoxicating and inspiring about Jennifer, and I've known her for a while, is that she spoke with such grace and humor and strength and inspiration and stories, but she spoke with vulnerability, with the being brave enough to tell her imperfections. And those imperfections, that vulnerability, is the foundation of the strength that we have that is unbreakable. Unbreakable. Anybody wants to call you out on your imperfections, on your non-homogenized self. I mean, look at this. I am in Hollywood, and this is what I look like. And yet, 30 years later, I am still. I'm doing Star Trek with Picard. I spend my days working with Patrick Stewart. Thank you.
Michelle, do you feel that your career and activism go hand in hand? Have you ever had to kind of put you don't seem like someone to put feelings on the back burner, but have you ever felt like that? Is it changing now?
Yeah, there's, for sure, I have a running joke with my peoples that I've always said, if I have an option between wearing heels or carrying a gun, I'll take a gun every time, because I want to be the person in charge. I want to be the boss. I don't need to be the girlfriend, the mother, the sister, this. I will do that. It's not that I'm not going to, but that's not why I'm here to tell my stories. And that's a conscious effort that I've made. I've had situations where I was doing a show and they cast me like this, and then when I got there, they said, "Okay, so we're going to straighten your hair." Which I was like, excuse me, what are you talking about? And I remember driving in my car and getting a phone call, saying, "Hi, Michelle, would you hold for producers?" And you're thinking, shit, what did I do? Did I suck that much on my first day? And I pulled over and said, "Sure, what's going on?" And they said, "Hi, Michelle, we love you. We love your curls. We really do. But we've done research, and our research tells us that if you're a woman of color and you own a business, you have to have straightened hair." And I was in such shock at that moment. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know how to handle that, and I'd agreed to this job. And so from that moment on, and this is what I hope I encourage us all, is that we learn. There's not a fault, like, oh, I didn't. We learn from these. From that moment on, I said, whenever I have a job, in my contract, we need to chat about my hair. You need to talk to me, and I need to approve what we do. And I will tell you that in space in 2386, whenever Star Trek is taking place, curls are still alive and well.
Yes, they are.
Just so you know. Yeah.
Well, that just comes from such a place of fear and insecurity. Oh, the research says. What research?
This is,
Thank
honey,
you.
I know, had I been like sharp, I could have said, could I see that report? I just would love to see it. And how many people signed off on it?
It was in the office next door.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's the research.
Hello.
That's the research. that's done.
Conversation by some narrow-minded
on that.
folks. So, time management. I'll let any of the ladies take this. These women are business women. They are mentors. They are activists. They are philanthropists. They are friends. They are maybe mothers, sisters, daughters. So Coach Wood, and I'm UCLA, has this quote about never mistaking activity for achievement. So give us some either time management tips, how you do it, advice for us to just, it's hard.
Yeah.
Lorrie.
Time management is, I mean, I almost feel like it's kind of impossible because there is always stuff left to do. You know, our jobs are our jobs, but outside of our jobs, we have in this time, in this place, in this environment that the redheaded monster has created, there is always, we have to do more. So time management is something that, you know, I think you sort of just create it as you go along. But most importantly, you just have to be present and be focused on what you're doing and doing. I mean, I was interviewed once and someone said, what's the best part and the worst part of your job? And I said, it's the same thing. I never know what's going to happen. And, you know, every Sunday night I make my list of things I'm going to accomplish during the week. And it always goes sideways because that's the way the world is. But it's about being present, and the time management comes from there. If in fact a thing like that exists.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Who invented that anyway?
I think I just spoke to these ladies up here about this. I've always said, and I say it often to my female friends particularly, that just like the stewards on the airplane, put your oxygen on first. And this is, it's a truth. Because if I don't put my oxygen on, I'm going to be able to help her. I might be able to help her, but I sure as shit am not going to be able to help the next person. And I'm not going to be able to save myself. Now, if I put my oxygen on first, I'm going to be able to save the whole world, right? So self-preservation, at least from my point of view, is the key to time management. That means knowing when to say no. And knowing when to, you know, say yes to something that you may not want to do, but you know it's going to further something. So self-preservation, be cognitive of that. It's one of the most difficult things I think women are able to grasp, because, you know, if we don't remind ourselves, we won't feed ourselves. We will feed every single person else, take care of everybody, and then that last thing we're like, there was something I was supposed to do today. Oh, eat.
Right.
That's right. So we really need to do that. You have to make a conscious effort to make sure that you, self-preservation, this is the foundation to make you, you know, to allow you to create, to change the world, to fulfill the dreams and change the things that you want to change in the world. But you need to make sure that you've taken care of this first, empower this first.
And that's a labor of love. I have 3 of my 4 children are in the audience, and I bet they could tell you a few things about my time management. Because what I found in the beginning was, as a nurse, it was nothing to go 8 hours without even thinking about going to the bathroom, let alone food. And you work a fast-paced emergency room or ICU like I did, it just didn't happen. And so having to retrain your brain, when I put the suit on, I started trying to figure out how do you balance, and that became the thing. Now today I have a rule. My assistant books everything from 8 to 5. I get to book everything on the other side of those 2 time frames. So that's helped me a lot, because it always allows me to have time for that person that couldn't fit into the day. And it also gives me time to act more urgently with situations that are important. I'm in the people business, and in a different way than entertainment, I guess, but it's all based on relationships. And if you're going to sit behind a computer and push out 500 emails a day, it's not the same. And I think that you have to really take the time to set your priorities. People are my priority. I know there are some you have to kind of cordon off, and there are others you need to let talk. But ultimately, that's the way I've learned to do it, and it works for me. I don't know that it would work for anybody else, because I think you have to make your own way. And but that's me. 8 to 5. Eileen has that time. I get everything on the other side, and then I never do anything on the computer after I go home. I stopped. I don't get home till about 8 or 9 o'clock. But so you walk in the door. But anyway, but when I get home, that time is mine, and and I think you all deserve that. And it doesn't have to be only when the kids go to bed. You need to carve out your time, and you need to help people understand that it is for you. It is your oxygen, because I use that all the time.
I love it. Good. All of us use it.
So, but it's really important. And if you don't take care of yourself, and if you're not a little bit selfish, it's really hard to take care of others.
And I just want to add to that is that for me, about 20 years ago, I did learn about rituals. And I found that when I make my daily activities that I do into a ritual, it really fills my soul. Like for instance, at night, like I tell my husband when I first met him, which was about 10 years ago, the bedroom is for restoration, it's for sleep, and it's for lovemaking. But we are not going to use this bedroom as a place to work. This isn't going to be the place where we're even going to fight or talk, work things through, because that's not what it's about. When I started creating boundaries, like everyone knows when they come to my house for dinner, our table, this is a place where we nourish our bodies. This is a place where we connect with each other. This is a place where we talk to each other. This isn't a place where people are going to comfortably, I will ask people, please, could you leave your phone? Because if I don't, then I am somebody that by nature, I could start going from 5 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock at night. Like that's by who I am. I just have this. And if I didn't do that, I am the person that at 28 years old, jumped out of bed and fell flat on my face. And I was in what was considered the peak shape you could be in. I was at an athletic, an athlete. And that's when I had to go back and say, wait a minute, how is it that I'm passing out at 28 years old? What's going on here? And I had to start creating some new boundaries for myself, because though I'm a high achiever and I love success, I am painfully competitive. I had to sort of start carving out different ways, because it wasn't serving my highest good to be that person. I was always depleted. I always had something. I either had a fever blister or I had a sty in my eye. I always had something. Today, I plan. I plan out my food that I'm going to eat. I bring little stuff with me, because I don't want to be that person that, I have my little nuts and I have my fruit and I know where I can stop and get my green drink. I have it planned out, because if you don't have a plan, I believe you're just throwing it out there and you're going to see where it sticks. But if you have a plan, and I even have a plan, like before I start a meeting, I know the 3 topics that we have to get through. I love to connect with people and hear about your family and hear about that. But I also know, I have to stay on course here, because I only have an hour to get all of this done. So I think the more you plan, you have to leave room in your plan for the process, and you have to leave room in your plan for that organic relatedness that needs to happen, because that is also a place where magic happens. If you're trying to control every meeting, you don't get anywhere, because it's usually the collaboration with other people and the energy they bring and the vibrancy and the energy they bring, that's where the magic is. But if you don't have a plan, I found for myself, I am always overwhelmed and I'm always empty, so I think a plan.
But I think if you have a plan, which is absolutely right, that you have a plan, but you also have to have a plan to pivot. You have to be able to pivot if you need to, because it is not everybody knows what your plan is, right? And so I think that's also part of us. And I think that's a skill that so many women do have, because we've had to pivot a lot in our workplace, in our home life, in our whatever, right? So I think you're absolutely right. Having a plan is one thing, but I think being able to be nimble and flexible and be able to to pivot in a way that satisfies you and whomever you're dealing with.
Yeah, I would call that, you have to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
You know, adaptation, I always say for me, is my superpower. Like, I can adapt to the circumstances. So I do think it's what you're saying. It's pivoting or adaptation is,
Close, they're
is
close.
the key.
They've been the thesaurus together.
Yeah.
So Karen, you developed a protocol. I thought this was just fascinating that really kind of shifted patient care and how the patient looks at themselves. So I don't need to get into it. Tell us about that, because you really did revolutionize care.
Well, we're still working on it. It's we adapt a lot too. But anyway, what's really important is that we all come into the hospital as people, where you're suddenly stripped of everything, right? Your clothing, your laptop. Sometimes we get your phone. Other times, you just come in and then we make you fast for testing. We wake you up all times of the day and night. We don't let you get out of bed. We let you get out of bed. It's a very organized thought process from the clinician's perspective, but we do very little to tune the patients. Well, then we call them patients. I started calling them consumers. But then we start to engage the patients in what they're doing, or the consumers in what they're doing. Wouldn't that be great? Because if they understand the plan, then can't they participate better? Because one of the things about an interprofessional team caring for patients in an acute care environment, in a hospital environment, is the benefit of the patient's perspective on what's wrong with them. And sometimes we just assume, and we work around them. And I'm sure if you've ever been in a hospital bed and you've had people talking over you or only talking to your family, and you're going, no, but I'm here, it's really interesting. And I think this really came home for me when my dad had a fall. 80 years old, he was wiring the neighbor's house, and he fractured his hip. He fell 10 feet off a ladder. Wow. And unfortunately, he was in great shape. And at 80 years old, he spent almost a month in the hospital. And in that time, he had attempted to fix his hip twice, which they did successfully. He was going through his rehab. He was on a ventilator because he had, of course, developed adult onset respiratory distress syndrome. And he was unable to get off the ventilator. He, in fact, was going to have to make a decision to shut the ventilator off and say goodbye. My first mentor, sounds a lot like your dad, and what I watched there was, when I got there, I flew across the country because he was on the East Coast, and I got there and I walked in, and here is my 80-year-old vibrant dad laying in a bed, disheveled, and looking like a little old man. And I said, that is so wrong. Who gave him Ativan? And I was on my mission, and I just, I looked him over and I said, this is wrong. So tidied him up, sobered him up, got him my daughter Kate, got him a little whiteboard, and we took him off all the sedation, and he wrote to us for 4 days while we waited for my brother to come back from France, so that as a family, we could take him off the ventilator and send him on his way. That was where I learned the importance of dignity and the importance of remembering that person in the bed. We are all adults, we bring a lot to the table. So my commitment from that moment forward was that we would make sure that every one of you, if you ever become a patient, gets valued and is honored as a member of the team. So what we've done is, in concert, there are 5 different things that there's research about. And it's actually, I can give you the peer-reviewed articles about sleep, the importance of sleep. Sleep is the only time your body heals. For all of you, how many of you got 7 hours of sleep last night? Yay!
Good on you.
Give yourselves a hand. That is the recommended number of hours of sleep. It's actually 7 to 9 hours of sleep is what is best for people between the ages of 18 and 65. Well, that doesn't happen very much in a hospital. But we had sleep. We have nutrition. I was embarrassed to find out how many people went without nourishment for as long as 72 hours in a hospital waiting for tests. Oh, no, we're going to do you, we might do you today. It's nighttime now. Okay, well, we'll do you in the morning. Well, that adds up. And I work in a teaching hospital, and a lot of people are learning. And so that was something we needed to become very cognizant of. We have hygiene. And the reason for hygiene is not so you don't smell, and not so that, you're literally washed. The issue is hygiene is more about self-confidence and esteem. How many of you go to the door in the morning when you know somebody's coming to visit you and have the house a mess and you're in your pajamas and you haven't brushed your teeth? Imagine sitting in a bed, doctorally prepared or famous on the outside, sitting in that bed, hair disheveled, feeling like you have bad breath, not having had your coffee, in that horrible gown we put you in, and sitting in a bed. How more vulnerable can you be? Okay? So that's the thing. Let's get past that. So one of the things is hygiene. Get them up, get them their opportunity to get washed up and get their teeth brushed. And then let's get people in to visit with them. Activity. One of the leading ways to reduce incidence of hospital-acquired conditions is mobility. So we actually get people up, much like my dad, on a ventilator with all sorts of tubes and pipes and everything, and we walk them. We walk them around the unit. That is helping reduce incidence of pneumonia, pressure ulcers, all sorts of stuff. And you know, no matter what's wrong with you, your bowel is king. If you are not normal and regular, you are going to be miserable. So mobility really helps with that, and so does hydration and nutrition. And then finally, hygiene, nutrition, sleep, activity. I'm missing one. It's killing me. Sleep, nutrition, activity, comfort. Comfort, not pain management, but comfort. And we talked about that in the integrative medicine meeting that was in here just before. It's not about opioids and it's not about CBD. It is about comfort. It is about relieving dis-ease. That's where the word comes from. And we want everybody to be at ease. So to be at ease, we want you regular, we want you fed, we want you well slept, we want you moving around. We want you, so that you can tell us who you are and what's important to you. Doing these 5 things at the same time is really giving us not only the opportunity to get the patients involved with the different members of the staff, it's also reducing their length of stay. And I know I learned in my doctorate when I was trying to beg patients or past patients to meet with me on the phone, the only reason most of them participated was because they wanted to help me get my doctorate. The last thing they wanted to talk about or remember was their hospitalization. And why not? It's a blip on their screen. My entire life is just a blip on somebody's screen. But own it. No ego. Fix them, get them home. So that's what wellness is at UCLA. It will be called the UCLA Way by the time we get done with it, but that is what we're doing. So if you have to come visit, we are going to take care of you.
Karen, that needs to be all over. That needs to be all over. That is so beautiful.
Well,
thank you so much for that.
I'm happy to talk about it.
So much for that.
We love that.
Yeah.
I think women, we work harder, we work longer, we are very hard on ourselves, which is a blessing and a curse. I know that I surround myself with great women because these great women have confidence. All of you, I look at such strength and confidence, but you have to deal with moments of insecurity. How do you deal with those?
Anybody want to go first?
I can.
I think it depends on the situation, frankly. I think you have to be smart about it, obviously, and sometimes you pretend that you're not afraid or that you're not feeling insecure. Or I think it's often, and it's I think what Jennifer said in the other room, sometimes you do expose your vulnerability. Doesn't mean you're any less strong, any less capable, right? But it just depends on the circumstance. But, I think that you have to have your fear or your insecurity motivate you as opposed to incapacitate you.
That's good. I'm sorry, I'm just still... that was just powerful. I mean, having witnessed my father dissolve in a hospital. And then my sister's going through breast cancer right now, and I stayed with her overnight after the surgery so that I could take care of and make sure that she had those 5 things, at least the ones I could do. So thank you for all of that. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
See, insecurity and vulnerable.
It's okay.
It's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's universal.
And I want to tell you that my fiance actually had to have surgery at UCLA. Dr. Litwin performed a surgery, and it was an incredible experience. And literally the nurse called. He had a tumor on his kidney, and the nurse called and said, "I just want you to know we're taking him in. All the vitals are good. I'll call you sometime during the surgery." She called, and the surgery was intricate because the tumor was underneath the liver and near the artery in the kidney. But she called and said, "Everything's going well. He's again, his vitals are fine. We'll be in probably another hour and a half, but we'll come out to see you when we're done." But literally, the care and kindness and the transparency shown by the staff was really incredibly comforting.
And since I'm an East Coaster and you went there, we need to enlighten some people. And I think we should all find out what those 5 things are and demand it. If we or any of our loved ones are in a hospital, we need to speak out consciously, make an effort and make that words be, those needs be met. As an actor, I've absolutely dealt with all kinds of insecurities and all that stuff. I mean, like, I go way back from, like, because as you can tell, I have a low voice. I'm not very buxom. When I was a kid, I was constantly called Mr. Hurd's son. And, like, I'm not a girl. That doesn't help, you know. I'm a girl. I mean, I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. I remember one of my first pilots in a wardrobe fitting, the wardrobe woman actually said to me, she goes, "I'll give you 2 years, honey, and then you'll get a boob job." You know, you're like, "Thanks so much for my unsolicited information.
For the love.
I'm perfectly fine." But I think the things that I've experienced is I've learned how to deal with it. You know, as an actor, you go into audition rooms and there's other actors around, and sometimes there's the ones that are very silent. They're the ones that are going over their lines. I'm a talker. I like to talk to people. I like to sort of give positive energy, and truthfully, I'm trying to get rid of my excess energy. I'm trying to get rid of my nervous energy. I'm trying to sort of calm the fuck down, take some deep breaths so that when I get in the room to do the audition, I'm actually present as I can. And also one of the things that I think is really important when it comes to those sort of scenarios, insecurities and such, is that we consciously, cognitively, prepare ourselves for both answers to a question. Right? So when you go into a situation, a job interview, or any conversation, sometimes you're hoping for just that one answer, which is yes to whatever it is you're saying. And then if you get no, it's very jarring. Prepare yourself for both answers. There's always 2 answers. And if that no answer is there, fine. At least you asked. At least you asked. You put yourself forward. And sometimes if you're too scared because you don't know whether or not to, you're too scared to ask the question, you don't. But if you can say it's okay if they say no and you ask the question, you might get yes as well. So it's that thing of like viewing, what's the worst that can happen? Like the worst time someone tells me that I'm a man, tells me that I need boobs, tells me to straighten my hair. That's your opinion. It doesn't mean anything. It's not going to kill me. In fact, it's just going to encourage me and empower me. And I have to say, for myself, as growing up, I never saw anyone like me on television. I never. In fact, I'm a New Yorker. I'm from the arts. We went to see Broadway shows. My father was also an opera singer. My sister is a dancer. She teaches at Alvin Ailey. She's one of the premier Horton teachers. We saw dance. We saw all those things. And not until we saw Ailey did I ever see any representation. If I saw Romeo and Juliet, I thought I was Juliet, and people were like, "No, you the maid." Like, why I'm the maid? Why I can't be Juliet? So it's that thing of sort of going, I'm here, I exist. Just because you don't think I look the way that you think I should look or act the way I should act, is your opinion. I respect that, but it doesn't mean I'm going to change and become homogenized into what the world sees. It's imperative for this, to be to be seen and celebrated. And, I remember the first time somebody came up to me on the street who was a mixy person and was like, "I remember you from an Always Maxi Pad commercial, for God's sakes." And they're like, "You're the Always woman." I'm like, "Yes, I'm about your period." I don't know. But, it's important for us all to, our insecurities, we're perfectly imperfect. We're perfectly imperfect. Embrace those things and let it empower you as opposed to letting it eat away at your strengths. It's part of our strengths.
Well, I think, the first thing I've always taught myself, positive self-talk before you have to do anything. Just, it's okay to talk nicely to yourself and about yourself, with yourself, and I strongly recommend it. The second thing is, I think one of the ways that women have slowly infiltrated, unbeknownst to men, is around the whole fact that when I first got into the business world, even though it was in healthcare, the whole thing was never let them see you sweat. Now it's okay to say, you know what, I messed that up. That wasn't so good. And you can live with it, and people respect you more for calling out your vulnerability. So I think we have had some positive influence in some great locations. So for that, I'm eternally grateful, because being perfect's hard. I mean, and highly overrated. But anyway, that's just how I do it. So
Unless you're Oprah.
Of course.
that's different. That's a different league.
I think for me, when I'm having one of those moments, I just always have to go back to myself. I just take a moment and I just say, okay, Lavinia, what's really going on here? I take a breath and I say, what are you really freaking out about? What's really going on? Usually for me, it's something like, you don't want to look bad, right? We all want to look good. We want to look good. We want to look smart. We want to look. And for me, it's just like, okay, Lavinia, just take a few breaths. You're prepared. And that's another thing for me. When I'm prepared, you take time to prepare yourself, when you're going into a meeting or whatever it may be. And I think also for me, it's like I'm very, I've gotten comfortable being uncomfortable. And at some point about 10 years ago, I had to learn to get to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And for many years, I lived very much in my comfort zone, and then I had somebody call me out on it and said, you are not living your biggest life. And I was just like, no, I love my life. I live in Malibu. I'm retired. It's amazing. And they were like, yeah, you have so much more to give. And I thought, it freaked me out. And then finally, I just got comfortable being uncomfortable and having courage to do things. And, this year I'm going and speaking at the Senate. They asked me to come in and speak on wellness. My first reaction was, why me? Don't you want Dr. So-and-so? No, Lavinia, we've heard you speak. We've watched your videos. We want you. And I thought, my first reaction was paralyzed for a minute. Like, really, they want me? They're like, you are so relatable. People, they feel you. They feel your energy. And I thought, wow, okay. And it's just those little things that just remind you that we are all normal. We all have those same fears. We all have those same vulnerabilities. And like you said, sometimes when we just have the courage to be authentic and share our vulnerability, it opens up the door for something amazing to happen, because you connect with that person on a whole different level, and it brings you forth in a more powerful level.
Yeah, I think listen, they said a lot in sports, and my dad would always say this to me as a kid, but how you deal with adversity, and I think sometimes insecurity can be an adverse thing, right? Is what defines you in a way, and how you react to that adversity. And so, and I always try to remember that. It's like, okay, what's happening in this moment that I can provide the solution for, right? So.
Yeah. And use a little laughter. I mean, if you mess up, laugh. Laugh at yourself. It's okay. Don't be self-depreciating too much, but just chuckle and say, what's next? It's all good.
So we're going to, in a minute, open it up to questions, but this is about badass women who give back, right? And you all give back in some way. And sometimes I think we look at, well, you're so high up, of course you can give back, you're at this. But talk about how women in this culture of philanthropy in their life, whether it's 1 minute or being on the board or a founder of something, which you might not, but talk about the importance of giving back and how that is so important for your soul.
I think it's incredibly important that we just amplify each other's voices, right? That supporting one another is a vital part of living your best life, really, And I spend a lot of time at my agency really talking to the younger women who are on the road to becoming agents. I want them to get in the pipeline, but I also want them to stay in the pipeline, and I want them to become the next board member, the next department head, whatever that is. And so it's just, it's supporting one another, and again, and just making sure we amplify each other's successes.
Yeah, I agree. And, I never knew that I was going to be on the boards of so many things, the committees of all these things. But as I said, it's really hard for me to see injustice. And, I've been asked and I've responded. And I think if we encourage each other to do that, we can change the world. But it is one of those things that you want to just reach out to each other and empower each other. And women, we need to support each other. We need to get on the same page. We're all on the same team. Let's work together. I mean, I was thinking about, I was at a restaurant the other day, and there was this woman, and she was by herself, and she was crying. And I was talking to a friend, and we're having this conversation. I just could not stop looking at this woman, and I don't know her. I didn't know anything about what's going on. And I literally told my friend, I was like, could you hold on a second? And I walked over to this woman, and I put my hand on her, and I said, I'm so sorry that you're in pain, and I just want you to know that I see you. And I'm not asking. I just want you to know that I'm here and that I see you. And we held each other, and she cried. And then she sort of said, thank you. And I said, thank you. And we went back to my room, my table with my friend. And she was like, what did you do? Do you know that person? I said, no, I don't. But she was in pain. And that's my sister. That's our sister. And I say this, and I see our men in here as well. And, I mean that all of us, inclusively. I want us all to be able to do that. And that's how you empower people. And that's how you encourage people. And who knows? I don't know. Maybe nothing happens of that. But maybe some other day she might actually see somebody and sort of go, you know what, I think I might need to reach out and just touch another person. So I encourage that. That's how we get each other, we get each other to empower each other and encourage each other to speak up and be heard and be seen, all of us.
And I do a lot of work with the March of Dimes. And I picked the March of Dimes because it's an opportunity for health equity. And, it's always...
Can you just tell people about the March of Dimes and what it is? I'm sure everyone knows, but...
Well, yeah, I could give you the whole history lesson from FDR forward. But the March of Dimes is actually a group that is absolutely dedicated to prenatal, the development of babies and their moms. So it's about protecting moms and babies in their most vulnerable time. And some of the things they've been able to do with research has been pretty amazing. They've helped underwrite a lot of the research and the development of the surfactant that they give babies now, the premature babies, to open up their lungs and things like that. So there's a lot of and also a lot of things about reducing the incidence of prematurity. Everybody needs to get to 39 weeks, right? I mean, and our goal is to keep that baby there as long as we can. So from a work perspective, it's important. But when I look at the other things, when I go to the walk and I see the people walking and I see the people with the babies who have survived prematurity, and I look, the equity is not there. When you look across the vista of the diversity in that crowd is huge, and there's so much we can do, and it takes so little. So to be there to speak for them, and to be there to be a part of setting an example for others around what you can do with very little to help is really important. And I think there's a lot to be said when you give back. It's not about writing a check. It's about showing up, all right? Because they don't, they'll always take the money. That's never it. But when you show up and you go to meetings or you go to events or what have you, and you take a stand, people start to understand more about the charity and more about the event and more about the benefit for people. And then to Michelle's point, pay it forward. That is always so important. But another statement I heard that I think resonates with me even more is be a better bystander, right? Be that person that goes up and says, "Hi, I'm sorry you're feeling so sad." Be that person. So, and that's what philanthropy does for me. I mean, I do a lot. I grew up doing it. Lions Club, Legion. I was at all my dad's functions. We all did pancake breakfast. So all those different things. We probably all remember things that we did with our families like that. So you learn at an early age, and hopefully it's something that you bring along with you and share with others.
Well, I agree with everything these amazing women just said, you know, and I'm on a lot of boards and I participate. And like Karen said, it isn't about writing the check. We do that and it feels good because we know we're participating. But, you know, for me, it's like when I wake up in the morning, I know this is going to sound really corny, but it's just who I am. Like I say, let me just bring sunshine everywhere I go. Let me just be the light. Like, let me be that person that's going to go get my tea at Starbucks and make this person's day that much better. You know, like, because I watch women. I've been on these boards where there's big charity events and they're raising millions of dollars, and I'm listening to the way they're speaking to the people that are working there, or I know the way that they're speaking to their help at their house. You know, for me, I have to tell you, that's something that really gets me. I mean, it's daunting, because for me, it's about being kind to people, everyone, no matter what you're offering, you know, it really is about that deep level of kindness and connection to people. And you know, for me, that's really the day-to-day of how I look at my life. Like, can I bring sunshine? And can that sunshine and that light just constantly make everybody's light, you know, feel better? And you know, it happens. I mean, like, the woman at Soul Cycle said to me, Lavinia, they all fight for who's going to sit next to you. And I'm like, what? And they just say you have the most amazing energy, and they just get so much off of your energy. And I'm thinking, like, that's like so awkward. But you know what? You start realizing that sometimes just sitting next to the right person that just makes you feel good, that actually impacts their life. You know, there's something so impactful. And for me, it's those little things that I have to say really just make my heart feel good.
But I think it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
You know, because energy is it's intangible, but it's tangible, right? But but also writing a check can be tangible, right?
Yes, it can.
And like
We like that too.
yeah, well,
Sorry, Courtney.
but like our company, our agency, we do a lot with big brothers and big sisters, and one of the things that we did was write a check for a full ride for a young woman to Loyola Marymount for her entire college career. Yes. And so I do think all of those things are important. So you have to cover the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And again, it's about discerning where those things are needed, right? And then there can be a little moment where you just have a conversation with somebody and it makes them feel better, and that's tangible. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, I think it's a spectrum of different things.
So we are pretty much done. We've got a couple minutes, so let's take a couple questions. Anybody have any questions for our panel? Right there, Red?
Well, first of all, it's myself and my two brothers. And my one brother, he did all the real estate. My other brother did all the design and architecture, and I pretty much did all the programming, the PR, and I think that's what's always surprising. And I will tell you, in the beginning, when we would first start going to meetings, I would walk in with my two brothers, and they looked at me like, oh, whose wife are you? Mm-hmm. And it was sort of like, and my one brother was very funny. He said, oh, no, this is not going to be a pretty meeting. So, I mean, in the beginning, I think in the beginning, it was a little bit shocking for people. I mean, we're also talking like, 1990, you know, so, and I was a very...
1990? I mean, it's like, it's not 1890.
No, but,
it's like,
it's like, you have to realize still women were not like, I mean, I was always the first woman at a banking meeting.
I totally hear you, but
like, how sad is that,
but
right?
remember, she said 1990. What are we talking about?
I know, but that's how you know, where
Crazy.
we were. Like that was, it was, you know, I was the only woman. And I was also a woman that loved my femininity. Like I did not want to go in there with blue suits on. I liked looking like a woman. I wanted to have my makeup on and my hair on. And that was also a time where nobody was used to that, because at the time women were all going in there in their man suit and their man energy, and they wanted to be like the man. And I'm thinking, no way, like I love being a woman. I'm very connected to my femininity, and I could still do an amazing job at what I do. You know, so I mean, I think there was a lot of things that were stretching at that time, you know. But
All
I
right,
had
one
fun.
more question and then we're done. Anyone else? I saw some hands earlier. Okay, yes. Thank you.
Hi, my question is, what are the qualities that you develop as young women that you think are integral to your success today?
That's a good one to end on. Wow.
I actually think, Michelle, you said the word first when you talked, I think you said tenacious. Yeah, I think it's tenacity and knowing that you're going to hear no a lot, but having a belief in yourself and your ability, and to be loud and proud about who you are as an individual.
Yeah. Be loud and proud. I like that. Yeah.
We all heard Jennifer Lewis, and I'm sure some people would, oh, wow, she loves herself. Yeah, she loves herself. She thinks she's beautiful. That's not having a bad ego. That's, why wouldn't
It's
you? If you
imperative.
don't, who else is going to?
Hello. I always used to say that to
Right.
like actors, like if you're waiting for somebody else to make you, you know, like, oh, they picked me, they found me, they're my biggest fan. You'll be waiting for a
Keep
period
waiting.
of time.
Yeah.
In
I'll
fact,
see
you
you
could be
later.
waiting for the rest of your life. Be your biggest fan. Know that secret. Be that. Make other people want to find out that secret. Be your biggest fan.
I think that's a good note to end on. Be your biggest fan. Thank you. Give a big round for these ladies. Thank you so much. So now that you're inspired by this incredible panel of women, let's continue this feeling. Please visit our website at mptf.com. Follow us on all our social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or if you're so inclined, we'd be so grateful for your support. You can text MPTF to 41444 to make a donation.